Hey guys, so I've got a bit of a problem. If you're a subscriber, you might recognize this guy. This is Blobbii, and he needs a new mold. Why? Well, the mold was a little too thin at his antenna, and I kind of ripped his mold in his last video.
Oh. Uh-oh. Did he rip a hole in it? Uh-oh.
Somehow, fixing it with tape worked, and the video was saved. But see this? Yeah, that's a hole. No bueno. It looks like I'm going to have to make a new mold. So, let's get started. I'm making a cap mold, which is a mold that has a little lid you squish on top. I'd love to have a 3D printed mold box for this someday, but for now I'm going to use a cup. I have to think about this mold upside down so there's room to pour the cap later. I think if I cut and glue the cup here, there will be enough room around the edges for Blobbii, and I will have enough space for the lid when I pour the second half. I'm just going to use this ridge as a guide to cut it. Snippy snippy, snip snip. In order for the plan to work, the cup needs to be glued like this, which means the bottom of the cup is going to be a problem. I'm just going to stab a slit in the bottom so I can get my scissors in there. And snip snip the bottom off. Perfect! Yoink! The next step is figuring out how much silicone I'm going to need to mix. So what I'm going to do is just dump rice into the cup to about the level I want the silicone. And then I'm just pouring the rice into a measuring cup so I can see how much to mix up. It comes to about 75 milliliters, and just to make sure I have enough, and also to make it easier to measure, I'll round it up to 100 milliliters. Before starting on the mold, I'm going to wipe Blobbii down with a microfiber cloth to get rid of any fingerprints. Now, to assemble the mold, I'm going to use some packing tape and a glue gun. I just need to take a couple of strips of tape and stick them together. Then Blobbii gets stuck to the tape, and I just want to make sure he's sealed to the tape nicely. I'm going to center the cup the best I can and then seal the bottom with hot glue. While I'm doing this, I need to take care to make sure there are no holes in the glue or the silicone will leak out. The silicone I'm using is called Mold Star 15. It's a 2-part platinum cure silicone. I'm going to pour equal parts of A and B and mix both halves together until the silicone is an even color. It's important to scrape the sides and bottom really well. This silicone is pretty good at degassing itself, but I still like to put it in the vacuum chamber to suck the air out. It's also pretty satisfying to watch. Now that it's mixed and degassed, I'm going to pour the silicone into the mold in a thin stream from high up. I'm showing you this because if you don't have a vacuum chamber, it's a good technique to know. This pops any large air bubbles you might get when you mix the silicone. Also, I'm extra, so I put my mold in the vacuum chamber for a few minutes to get any trapped bubbles to the surface. And then into the pressure pot to cure for 4 hours. Now that the silicone is cured, I'm going to take the tape off and remove the mold from the cup. By the way, if you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe so I can grow my channel. And consider leaving a tip on my Ko-fi page. I'm using a sharp X-Acto knife to cut a couple of differently sized notches so the cup can be lined up properly when I cast. Next, I'm going to push my mold into a new cup so I can see where I need to trim it. I'm just going to mark where I need to cut it, and some more snippy snips. Before I pour the second part of the silicone, I need to add some mold release to the top of the mold or the silicone will bond to itself and I won't have a cap. I'll just have a sad Blobbii encased in silicone that I'll have to cut out. I've had this can of mold release for ages. It's simple to use, you just spray on a couple of light coats, letting it dry 5 minutes between each pass. I'm also spraying the sides in case the silicone leaks between the mold and the cup. But Def Taffy, I don't have a can of mold release, what will I do? I got you covered. What you want to do is get some petroleum jelly and some mineral oil. Then take some of the jelly and mix it with the mineral oil a bit at a time until it's thin enough that it's easier to brush onto the mold. I'm using an old paintbrush for this. Then all you have to do is carefully brush it onto the silicone. Be careful not to paint the master with it. It'll mess up the surface texture because your cast will show the brush strokes. If you don't have mineral oil, you can just use the petroleum jelly, it's just harder to control. Also, this probably could have been thinned out a little more. I've slid my mold into the cup and pressed it in a bit so it's tight. That should be enough to keep the silicone from leaking, but to be on the safe side, I'm going to hot glue it to this plate. Silicone likes to find the smallest crack or tiniest hole and escape. The rest of the steps are pretty much the same as the first half. Here I'm just mixing up a small quantity of silicone, about an ounce. It's just going to be poured on top and cured in the pressure pot. Here's my cured mold. Time to free our boy. The lid should peel right off. Awesome! Boop! Aw, yeah, this mold looks pretty good. This step isn't necessary, but I think it makes the mold look cleaner. I'm using a cuticle trimmer to trim off the raggy edges of the mold. And of course, the last thing to do is to test out the mold. I've mixed up some classic blue transparent urethane resin. With a cap mold, you want to put a little resin on the cap. It helps push the trapped air out and allows extra material for when the resin shrinks in the pressure pot. Shall we see if the mold works? Looks good to me. I think this mold has less flashing than the old mold did, so that's good. And there you have it! I hope this video helped anyone wondering about cap molds. The process is similar for dice, but if you want me to show you that sometime, leave a message in the comments. Thanks for watching! See you next time!